The handout that I sent, we're going to look at that today, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. If you don't have one, it is in the back. We'll go ahead and dive right in because we're already up against time. So we got 40 minutes, so I think I can hopefully keep you interested. We're jumping in to divisions. Again, this is a survey. We cannot go down every single rabbit trail to talk about every single symbol, but the point of this class is to sort of to dispel any fear that you have or hesitance that you have of trying to study Revelation for yourself. It's just sort of an introduction. I can't answer all the questions, and sometimes when I come out of here, I feel like I moved too fast, and I cover everything I needed to. Did I lose people? It's just the nature of the material. It's just the nature of the material. I mean, we could do a 39-week study, and I think I would lose even more people that way. I don't think people are going to would go through a 39-week study. So. But I've seen people do it. There's actually a couple of, I've found a couple of good Revelation series. There's a guy down in Florida, and I've listened to his series some, in preparation for this class, and also just to remind me what the different scriptures are about. He has a 39-week series, and he goes into a lot more depth than I will. There are some very good PowerPoints and very good YouTube videos from sound congregations that you can find on the internet, and I encourage you to look. And it's one of those things where you try to teach yourself, but there's a lot in here that we need to rely on each other. We have some chairs, extra chairs.
Cup up there.
All right, we have a couple more people that have come, so we need to scrunch in. We don't want to lose people, and don't forget the handout. So I want to just look at real quick some of the symbols that you're going to see in Revelation. Now I have laid out the Revelation like this. Now again, a couple weeks ago, people tend to make the complaint that people say Revelations. And they shouldn't say Revelations because that's not the word in Greek. It's apocalypse, and it is the revelation singular. However, when you actually read the scriptures and you start coming across the words of John when he says, "And then I saw, and then I saw," and then you lay out, you can lay out there are different visions within Revelation. One thing that futurists and historicists get caught up on is they try to apply everything in sequence, and they try to order all the events in Revelation in this long linear sequence. And if you go through it that way, then it kind of initially it pulls you in that direction of saying, okay, this is going to be a sequence of events leading up to the end times, or we've got to explain every single thing, and this has to mean something, and this has to mean that. And people just get completely lost, and it all goes back to not having the foundation that we saw in the first couple of weeks when we looked at Matthew 24. The end times we really cannot predict. Okay, it's just not there, and there's nowhere. John does not say, "Hey, this is what's going to happen at the end of the age." He doesn't say that. He says quite the opposite. He says these things will soon come to pass. Okay, and so this stuff is happening in the first century. Now that said, it's not just limited to the first century, but it is something. It's sort of about the condition of man, and we're living it today. But what we're not going to do, and what I don't think John is really doing, we're not going to assign specific things to different symbols that are very distinct. They're more of like forces. I'm not going to say, the 10 horns of the beast or the European Union. We're not going to go that way. Okay, that's not what John's saying. Now there is one exception that when we get to the beast, there are I think we can understand what the heads of the beast are, and they are specific empires, but they've already come to pass, okay? And we'll get to that. And I think it's also not very controversial. I think everyone will understand what John is talking about. So when you look at the scriptures like this, and when you pay attention to the pivot points when John goes from one vision to the next, and you lay it out like this. And by the way, I put it in chart form, but this is really I'll tell you where I got this from, and I've got it from several places because several people have come to the same conclusion. Because I think when you read the scriptures, it's kind of easy to get there. But the verbiage that I used in this is from Kaufman's commentary. Now, if you've ever gone into a library and you see a plain black commentary set in gold letters, it's in every, I think it's in every Church of Christ library. There is. It was Burton Kaufman was a preacher at Manhattan Church of Christ. Well, he was in various places, but he was spent the longest period of time in Manhattan Church of Christ in New York, and he wrote a commentary, across the entire Bible on every single book. That was his lifelong goal. I think he died at 102. He was able to accomplish his goal, accomplish it long before he died. But it was a very audacious project, and he did it. And the reason why people like his commentary, academics will say, well, it's not really a truly great academic work, and you really can't rely on one person to expound on the entire Bible. And I understand that, but the good thing about that commentary is he is very good at cross-referencing, other verses. And he's also very good, I think, about at least mentioning or pointing out the various questions on each verse. And there are certain commentaries in his series are stronger than, or I think even better than others. It's all good, but I think that his commentary on Romans, Hebrews, and then Revelation are probably, in my opinion, three of the most pivotal religious books that I've read in my personal faith. I mean, they are quite good. And again, I don't think he's just pointing out other scriptures and commentary, and then he's really good also about referencing arguments of other people. And sometimes he just says, okay, this person says this and this person says that. And I think that's good, to consider what other people are saying. And some people he disagrees with and some people he doesn't. But this is, in his book of Revelations, he lays out an outline at the beginning of his commentary, and it corresponds roughly with also people like Floyd Wallace, Dan Gilbert, if you know Dan Gilbert from Freed Hardeman. They have similar outlines, and I just charted it. I think if you walk away from this class, if your house is like my house, it's full of a bunch of books that I don't want to throw away because they mean something to me, but I never have time to read them. As Solomon said, too many books, it makes the body grow weary. And I look at my house and think, I feel materialistic just to have that many books, but that's how knowledge was communicated for 2,000 years. Now we have the internet, we don't do that. But if there's one piece of paper that if you can take away from this class, I would like, take this and keep it in your Bible, keep it in Revelation, keep it somewhere you can pull it out. Because if you ever do get into a conversation about Revelation, I want you to pull this out. Because to me, when you tablize it, when you put it out like this, the symbols all of a sudden start cross-referencing each other. You don't have to start over again in each vision, okay? They reference each other, and you realize John is really saying the same thing 7 different times. He's talking about the struggle between good and evil. He gives an introductory vision, which is a lot about describing the glory and majesty of God. And there's symbolism behind it, but again, not revealing of human history per se in that sense. Then he talks about a corrupted earth. There's the suffering for sin, and then mankind chooses sides, and then there's final judgment. And you see those 5 components in each of the visions. Okay. As John loves 7, there are 7 stills, there are 7 trumpets. He also likes the numbers 3 and 4. He likes all the numbers mean something, but they're mainly again associated with the perfection and completeness and glory of God, and not and people start trying to figure out what each number means, and you can get lost that way. A lot of the symbols repeat, and and I'll just go through some of the symbols right here. There's the candlesticks at the beginning of the scriptures, which is a clear reference to Zechariah. There's the cherubim, which is a reference to Isaiah and Ezekiel. And so John borrows from Old Testament scriptures on a lot of these symbols. There are some symbols that are kind of unique to Revelation. The 24 elders, he talks about the 144,000, which is, I think, a fairly easy symbol to explain, but a lot of people have really gone sideways on that one. There's the 7 seals, the 7 altars, the 7 trumpets. The sea, I want to go ahead and tell you what this one is, okay, because it comes up over and over again. And the Bible even Revelation says this in the verse. It doesn't say it in verse 5, chapters 4 and 5. It says it in later scriptures. But John constantly uses the sea as the populations of the earth, humanity. That is the sea. And so when he talks about the crystal sea and stuff like that, and the calmness of the water, sometimes the water is very turbulent, and sometimes the water is very calm, depending on the visions that John is trying to invoke. But he is referencing the populations of the earth. The woman and her son, this is an allusion to the Son of Man, Jesus being a product of both man and God. The woman represents us, okay, the church, and sometimes it is the apostate church. The vision is somewhat flexible. There's another thing that comes up over and over and over again. There is a number that is very important, and it is clearly a reference to Daniel, and it's a reference to other scriptures, and we'll look at those. 3.5 years, okay, or 3.5 days. It's over and over again. It's mentioned several times, and it's a reference to the prophecy in Daniel. But it's also there's other scriptures as well. Again, people get caught up in thinking, okay, there's going to be this period of 3.5 years of tribulation. Like we're going to start in January and in July, and we're going to go through. A lot of people are going to die, and they think it's going to happen in the future, and that's not what it's really referring to. It's talking about it's a reference to the ministry of Christ, which lasted 3.5 years, just like Daniel said it would, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get time to come to that. There are the 2 prophets. That's a very difficult one. That one is, to me, probably the most difficult prophecy to explain, because I can't really tell you exactly what the 2 prophets are. But you think about in the Jewish law, it took 2 witnesses to convict someone in a court, and so there are 2 witnesses, and sometimes depending on what version you use, they are referred to as the 2 witnesses and not the 2 prophets. It is. We'll talk about that later, but it's about the conviction. And then I'll go ahead for the sake of time, just breeze through the next few. But then there's a 7-headed dragon. And we tell you, well, we're going to take the Bible literally. Well, okay. No one is expecting a dragon to come up out of the Atlantic Ocean or a land beast. Clearly symbolic. So when we say literally, yes, we believe that the Bible is the inspired Word of God and everything is real, but we understand, no one is doubting that these visions are just that, visions, and they're symbolism, and we're not expecting something like a biblical Godzilla to come up out of the ocean. The number 666, people get caught up on that. I think that's going to be an easy one to explain. We talk about the horns. There's the great whore, which I'll go ahead and telegraph this. This is the apostate church. And then the things like the lake of fire being symbols of hell, and the New Jerusalem, which symbolizes heaven, but also it's a symbol of just the people of God and the city of God itself. So the organization of Revelation, it is not chronological. This is not not a sequence. Lots of then I saws, and I will point those out as we go I probably should have had this up as I was referencing it, but anyway. So let's go ahead and get into Revelation 4. And after this, I looked, and so he already is transitioning. He is moving away from the visions that he had about the 7 churches, which next week I'm going to print a handout with the 7 churches, and everything they did good and everything they did bad. It's another good chart to keep, but we did not. We purposely are kind of not going through that because each one of those is a lesson in itself, and we're going to focus more on the visions. And the first voice that I heard speaking to me was like a trumpet. Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this. And at once I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne stood in heaven, with one seated on the throne. And he who sat there had the appearance of jasper and carnelian, and around the throne was a rainbow that had the appearance of an emerald. And around the throne were 24 thrones, and seated on the thrones were 24 elders, clothed in white garments, with golden crowns on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning and rumblings and peals of thunder, and before the throne were burning 7 torches of fire, which were like the 7 spirits of God. Now, how can God have 7 spirits? Again, he is multifaceted. He is one person, but there are different aspects of him. Isaiah 11:12 actually even mentions 7 spirits, and this is maybe what John is alluding to. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom, the Spirit of understanding, the Spirit of counsel, the Spirit of strength or might, the Spirit of knowledge, and fear of the Lord. Okay, and so the 7 spirits is a reference. I'm using the menorah as that symbol. There are feast days that go across 7 days, like the Feast of Trumpets and the Feast of Passover. 7 is a number of completeness, and our week is still a reference. The week that the entire world still ascribes to is 7 days, and so it is written into human history, and that's something to consider. If we lay out this throne room, as you're reading in narrative form, it is important to step back and try to envision in very simple terms what John is laying out. Okay, he has the Father in the middle of the throne, and then around him is the throne. Then there is an emerald rainbow. Now it's kind of like, well, how can it be a rainbow if it's like an emerald? Well, all emeralds, there are multicolored emeralds. In fact, ruby is just a red emerald, if I'm correct. Or is that a red sapphire? I can't remember. But there's a difference. The emerald is a very extremely precious stone, and the rainbow itself is associated with the covenant of Christ. Now, the rainbow has been hijacked recently by political forces that we won't discuss here, but it's terrible what's happened to that symbol. Okay. The rainbow is a covenant regarding God's salvation of earth, not wanting to destroy it, and yet we're taking that and using it for all kinds of nefarious purposes nowadays. But after the rainbow, there are 4 creatures, and the 4 creatures have 6 wings. So 4 times 6 is 24, and then there are 24 elders leading to that. Now, the 24 elders, people try to describe who the 24 elders are, but the most logical thing I can think of is a reference to the 12 and 12. There were 12 tribes. There were 12 sons of Jacob. There are, and then in the New Testament, there are 12 apostles who, again, there's this innate symbolism in the numbers, but it doesn't, we have to be careful about not going too deep. It's just a way of sort of speaking to us about, the structure and the organization, the purpose of God, but you can't get into the individual numbers too much. But these elders, these leaders are sitting around the throne, and then there are 7 torches circling the elders, again a reference to the seven spirits of God, and then beyond that is the sea, the crystal sea, which it doesn't say it here in verse 4 and 5, but we do see it in other places in Revelation. We know that sea is reference to humanity. And how is humanity? Here it is calm. So John, we'll get to that in 1 second. So John is being in the spirit. This is not a bodily rapture. He is entranced in a vision. And after these things, he does not mean after the prophecies have been fulfilled, but after John saw them. So he is simply moving from one vision to the next. He's moving from the vision of the churches, moving to the vision of the throne of God. It is surrounded by peals of thunder and precious stones. It is to convey power and worthiness. And it is, if we think about beauty and what is valuable, obviously all of these stones are incredibly valuable, and it's something that people in the first century would not see all the time. Now in modern times, we have lost, our concepts of beauty and value have kind of changed a lot, and not necessarily in a bad way. I'm not talking about the decadence of humanity. I'm not, because humanity has always been decadent. I'm talking about the way we interact with the world. I mean, I've spent too much time of my life in front of a screen. I'm so sick of looking at a computer screen. I often wonder if I was born in the wrong century. I feel like I can't accomplish anything unless it involves a computer, and it's really frustrating. The computer, it's full of vibrant color, all kinds of beauty, and we take it for granted, But back then, just looking at an emerald or looking at a precious stone or looking at gold was something that enchanted the masses, and nowadays it's just almost a color. I've never been big on. I've never understood jewelry. I never have. I mean, it's rare and it's beautiful, and I do admire it from that part. I just when I want to throw down thousands of dollars for a little rock. It's just carbon, guys. I mean, it's and the other thing that kind of runs, my dad was an organic chemist, and so anytime we would talk about rocks, we end up talking about the chemical structure of everything, and it's just been rearranged. It's all the same thing, But I appreciate it in that it is a testimony to the glory of God. But as far as something I want to put my work in, I don't really. Think about doing that. I am captivated by the beauty of the world, the stars at night, and as Solomon said in Ecclesiastes, what are we to do with it except to behold it with our eyes? You have all these riches. What can you do with it? You can just look at it. Unless you're eating it or wearing it or consuming it in some form, it's not really going to do you any good. You just have to enjoy the beauty. And in that respect, we all have eyes, and we all can enjoy the beauty of the world. So in laying out these beautiful stones and the gold and all of this other stuff, it is just simply to convey the glory and power and try to relate that to the humanity. If it was written to us in the 20th century, and it has been across the time. He may have chosen different symbols if John was originally writing it to people in modern times. But this is how he wrote it, though, in the first century. It's important to note that God is a person. He is an individual separate from us. We are in God, but He is separate. As you're reading this, we have to remind ourselves that God is a person. He's a personal God. There is personal responsibility that we have to Him. He's not just an extension of the universe. He is someone that has a moral foundation that we have to adhere to. Now, let's look at some scripture from the Old Testament. When we think of John, we don't think of John as a prophet. I said, name the prophets of the Bible. People probably wouldn't say John. But he was, and he was a prophet. He was a prophet of the New Testament. And the wonderful, beautiful thing about John's literature is he's always tying it back to the Old Testament. And if you're not familiar with some of the stuff he's saying in the or you're not familiar with Old Testament symbolism, it's kind of hard to understand John in Revelation. But in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings, just like the creatures here in Revelation. With 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole world, earth is full of his glory. And so this is, John's vision is referencing Isaiah, but it's also distinctly different. It is a new vision. So it's just, what is the purpose of that? It is to relate back to the power and the glory of God. This is a manifestation of the spiritual. And so moving on to Revelation 4, 6 through 9, and before the throne there was as it were a sea of glass like crystal, and around the throne on each side of the throne are 4 living creatures full of eyes in front and behind. The first living creature like a lion, the second like an ox, the third like the face of a man, and the fourth like an eagle in flight. And the 4 living creatures, each of them with 6 wings, are full of eyes around and within, and day and night they never cease to say, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. And we sing that song, and that's where that song references this verse. And whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to him who is seated on the throne, who lives forever and ever. So again, the sea of glass is the populations of the earth. The eyes denote the omnipresence of God. He is receiving a commission just like Isaiah and Ezekiel and Daniel. They received, and Zechariah, they had these visions, and so much of the vision is just describing the majesty and power of God, and it should be very, powerful and intimidating, and it's really just that. There's not much more to go beyond that. Let's see, I'm going to take that redundant slide out. Now the 4 creatures, a lot of people have tried to associate those with the Gospels. I don't think it is. I don't think it's the 4 evangelists. But let's go through. Matthew is generally associated with as a man. Like I said, I'm not associating the evangelist with the Gospels, but the 4 creatures are a man. This emphasizes the incarnation of Christ. There's a reference to a lion. Refers to John the Baptist as like a roaring Baptist in the desert. Some people associate it with that, but I'm just saying it's more about the power. I mean, there's nothing more powerful. There's no more powerful creature that the Israelites would know than a lion. Now there's the tiger. Tigers they say are even stronger than lions, but they didn't have tigers in Israel. There's an ox, which is an emphasis on sacrifice, and then an eagle, which is an emphasis on divinity. And if you think about those are the creatures that they're going to associate with power in that time. The eagles, which were more like vultures in that part of the world, and eagles actually here we don't think of eagles as vultures, but the eagles in that part of the world have much larger wingspans than even the eagles in North America. It wasn't a bald eagle, okay, because that's an American species. But it's something that, even the Empire of Rome itself associated eagle with power. It dominated the skies. The ox was dominated the earth, and it provided the power for food and the sacrifice. And then the lion was associated with the predatory nature, the dominance over all the other animals. Nothing could attack or kill a lion. So the reason I bring this up, I do want you. The reason I even associate it with the evangelist, I do want. Whoops. If you're ever looking at art, you're gonna see the four evangelists. You can see the cow is underneath, not the cow. The bull is underneath Luke here. The lion is underneath Mark, and there's an eagle above John. I do want you to have some cognizance of where some of the Christian symbolism comes from, even if it's wrong. But it's referring to these verses, and I think it's good to have that conscious of where the symbolism comes from. Looking at Ezekiel, as I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually, and in the midst of the fire as if it were gleaming metal. And then I'll skip down to verse 8. Under their wings on their four sides they had human hands, and the four had their faces and their wings thus. Okay, they again, there's four faces, there's four likenesses. Again, John is referencing scriptures like Ezekiel. The creatures are very different, but the important thing to take away is the number 4. Okay, and it's associated with the earth. Okay, the four corners of the earth. I'm going to go ahead and skip through Ezekiel for the sake of time. Now he gets to verse 4 and 10, talks about the 24 elders. Again, there are 4 creatures, there are 6 wings. There, 4 times 6 is 24, but then you have 24 elders, which is probably most likely just a reference to what I said earlier, the 12 tribes of the Old Testament, the 12 apostles, both, the past and the future. There's the leadership, the governance, this completeness. It is not. We don't need to go trying to name the 24 elders. It's pure speculation. There's no justification for who the 24 elders would be. You cannot list it out in scriptures. And if there are anybody, they're the 24 elders are the 12 sons of Jacob and the 12 apostles. Although you can quickly realize that some of the 12 sons of Jacob weren't really that good. So you really can't really go there, and even one of the apostles turned out not to be so good either. So it's to say it was specifically them, I think would be a stretch. But it's more about it's the organization of humanity submitting to God. Worthy are you, our Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they existed and were created. Now, what's interesting about these verses is the Romans use some of these verses word for word to talk about their emperors. John is getting in front of that and saying, "Hey, God is emperor. He is the Lord. He is who we worship." Okay. There are specific references that we have to Domitian, for example, very similar verbiage to Revelation. Okay. A lot of people have tried to explain all of the symbolism in Revelation, a lot of the idolatry, as emperor worship, and I agree that yes, you can associate a lot of that imagery in Revelation with emperor worship, as you can all false religion. Okay, we'll talk more about that, especially when we get to the beast. It's again, it's not talking about. It is something that's rooted in the first century, but it's not just the first century, and you at least have to acknowledge the parallels. But all false religion, power, the empire, these forces of evil that work through our world, they do follow a pattern, okay? And they generally are associated with the rejection of God. And humans pursuing their own desires leads to great and terrible things that happen on humanity. So so Revelation 4, the takeaway is, it's mainly the power of God. Now the 24 elders fall down before him who was seated on the throne, and they worship. They invoke his power. Going to verses 5, then I saw on the right hand of him who was seated on the throne a scroll written with within and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the scroll and break its seals?" And no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or to look at it. And I began to weep loudly, because no one was found worthy to open the scroll or to look into it. This is very similar to Isaiah 6. There's no one that is worthy. And one of the elders said to me, "Weep no more. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has conquered, so that he can open the scroll and its 7 seals." And so Jesus is, as the sermon was this morning, he is the redeeming factor. He has allowed us to be in the presence of God. We do not understand it, but it works. He is the sacrifice. God cannot just dismiss our sin as unimportant. He has to die unto himself in the form of Jesus Christ. He has taken our sin upon him, and he has suffered for us. It is something that it is a mystery, but it is the redemptive plan of humanity, and it is the destiny of mankind. If you look at other references, verses Psalm 46-8, "In sacrifice and offering you have not delighted, but you have given me an open ear. Burnt offering and sin offering you have not required. Then I said, Behold, I have come. In the scroll of the book it is written of me. I delight to do your will, O my God. Your law is within my heart." All the sacrifice of the Old Testament was a shadow of things to come, and this reference to a book, the instruction, we associate the books with instruction, and a list, and you think about God having a list in that series of instruction that he's attempting to convey to us. John is invoking that imagery here. "And between the throne and the 4 living creatures, among the elders, I saw a lamb standing as if it had been slain, with 7 horns and 7 eyes, and which are the earth, and the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. And he went and took the scroll from the right hand of him who was seated on the throne. And when he had taken the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each holding a harp and the golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints." And so this imagery, again, it is to invoke the power of God, the completeness. God is over everything. We think of the Lamb, if John was to see this, some of the visions, they're quite bizarre. They look very strange to us. A lot of people have talked about AI, and sometimes you get these AI, these computer-generated imagery, and the computers come up with some very bizarre images. But if you look at Revelation, there are some very bizarre images as well. And I kind of think about that when I think of AI. It's like how the computer, how a computer can get in a loop and create weird things like that. But some of the imagery, like I said, it's something that we would not probably come up with on our own, but it's something we don't. Again, it's to invoke the power of God, and the number 7 is what's important to take away from that. 7, completeness. "And they sang a new song, saying, Worthy are you to take the scroll and to open its seals, for you were slain, and by your blood you ransomed people for God from every tribe and language and people and nation, and you have made them a kingdom and priests to our God, and they shall reign on the earth." And now that's important because when is John writing? John is writing in the 1st century. Now, whether you believe in an early date of Revelation or a late date, people are still concerned about the reestablishment of the Jewish kingdom over the earth. And they're looking for this great restoration of Jerusalem. John has said it's going to happen, but it's not happening the way you think it's going to happen. The restoration of Jerusalem is the people and the children of God, the true children, those who obey and love him. And this kingdom has been established. And you look at some of the prophecies, especially Daniel, this is what he is saying. This is happening, and it's happening now. God is not someone limited just to a certain group of people, not to Jews or even people in Western civilization. It is from every tribe and language and people and nation. God is the creator of humanity, and all of humanity will be brought up to him. Again, the Lamb of God, the 7 eyes denote the omnipresence, 7 horns denote the power. The word that he is using is arnion, and it is used 28 times, and it emphasizes sacrifice. So the Lamb is powerful, but he has been sacrificed. He has died for us. In going through some of the verses in Revelation, talking about the Lamb of God, he has been slaughtered. He is worthy to receive praise, by 5:12. He is able to open the seals. He is redeemed, ascribed their, the redeemed ascribe their salvation to him. They have washed their robes in his blood, and we don't think of washing in blood to produce something white. It's truly a very spiritual process. And you would never wash something in blood and consider it clean, but his blood is not like the physical blood of earth. The Lamb has overcome everything by his blood, verses 12, chapter 12 and 11, and we are now in his book. So we will, let's see, we're out of time, and this is a good place to start. Next week we're going to talk about the 4 horsemen and what they are not. And what they are. What they are not, they are not the Notre Dame backfield in 1924. They are not the 1986 professional wrestling group. And they're not the Earp Brothers or Marvel comic book heroes, but they are, I think when we talk about them next week, I think it'll make sense who the 4 horsemen are. And the 4 horsemen are with us today. Again, not individual people or symbols or countries. They are the forces that are arrayed against us in humanity, and John is just envisioning them in a way that is very interesting. We will start there, and we will get through the rest of the verses. We'll get through chapter 6 and 7 next week. Okay. I hope that.